You wore her panties for 3 years.
I had a pair of panties that she gave me I wore them longer than that.
Before Patsy Cline's plane went down on March 5, 1963, she had made one last phone call to Loretta Lynn. She was offering her $70 to come along to Kansas City for the benefit show. Loretta had already committed to a gig in Memphis. She said she couldn't make it, and her last words to Patsy Cline, the last thing she ever said to her closest friend in the music business, were these: "I sure wish I could come with you." Hours later, Patsy Cline's plane hit the ground in a Tennessee forest, killing everyone on board. Loretta Lynn heard the news that morning, and what she said out loud in that moment, in the quiet of wherever she was when the call came through, was something her family kept close for 60 years before it fully came out.
I ain't about to be nobody else. I'm just me. And if I was trying to be somebody else, I'd have never made it either.
And what she did in the weeks after that morning was something that almost ended her career before it had fully started. Loretta Lynn arrived in Nashville in 1960 as a 25-year-old coal miner's daughter from Butcher Hollow, Kentucky, who had been married at 13, was already the mother of 4 children, and had recorded one independent single that had gotten enough regional attention to get her a spot on the Midnight Jamboree, the radio show that aired out of Ernest Tubbs' record shop after the Grand Ole Opry signed off every Saturday night. One of those Saturday nights in 1961, Loretta stood on a stack of Coca-Cola crates so the people inside the crowded shop could see her. She had taken off her shoes to gain the extra height, and she dedicated her performance of I Fall to Pieces to the singer who had recorded it, Patsy Cline, who was lying in a hospital bed recovering from injuries so severe that her doctors had not been certain she would survive. Patsy Cline heard the broadcast from her hospital room, and she sent her husband Charlie Dick to the record shop to find out who that girl was and bring her in. What happened when they met is one of the most documented moments in country music history, and also one of the most misunderstood ones. The version that gets told is the sweet one: established star reaches down to lift up young talent. The version that was actually true was more complicated and more honest and more like what 2 working-class women with difficult marriages and no formal education actually did when they recognized each other. Patsy Cline taught Loretta Lynn how to shave her legs, how to apply stage makeup, how to walk in heels. She bought Loretta stage dresses when the money wasn't there. She bought curtains for Loretta's house. And when women at the Grand Ole Opry tried to push Loretta aside, treating her the way women in competitive industries have always treated the person coming up behind them, Patsy Cline shut it down without hesitation. "She put the stamp of approval on me," Loretta wrote in Coal Miner's Daughter. And what she meant was, Patsy Cline used her standing to make Loretta's presence at the Opry unchallengeable. Nobody was going to push Loretta Lynn aside while Patsy Cline was in the building. The image of Patsy Cline that Nashville promoted was the powerful voice, the stadium presence, the woman who could make crazy sound like something that had happened to you personally. And all of that was true. But what Loretta Lynn knew about her, what the people who only saw her on stage didn't, was the version that existed when the cameras weren't running. Patsy Cline had been sexually abused by her father. She had married young, then divorced, then married again. She had spent years fighting a record label that wanted her to stay in the box they had built for her, and she had fought them publicly, loudly, and without apology. When Loretta watched Patsy argue with her manager one afternoon, actually yell at him, which Loretta had never seen a woman do to a man in the music business, she told Patsy she could never do that. "Hell's bells, Loretta," Patsy said. "Those boys are your managers, not your bosses." That sentence changed how Loretta Lynn operated for the rest of her career. She said so herself, in multiple interviews across multiple decades. "After I met Patsy, life got better for me because I fought back. Before that, I just took it." They had less than 2 years together. From the spring of 1961 to the morning of March 5, 1963, 22 months, in which Patsy Cline rebuilt the way Loretta Lynn understood herself and her right to take up space in a business that was not designed for either of them. Patsy Cline had been in Kansas City for a benefit concert organized to raise money for the family of a radio DJ named Cactus Jack Call, who had died in a car crash 3 months earlier. The original commercial flight back to Nashville had been canceled because of rain, so Patsy's manager, Randy Hughes, who was also Cowboy Copas' son-in-law, chartered a small plane and piloted it himself. On board with them were Hawkshaw Hawkins, Cowboy Copas, and Patsy Cline. They were 85 miles from Nashville when the plane went down in the forest near Camden, Tennessee. There were no survivors. Loretta Lynn heard the news on the morning of March 5th, 1963. What she said out loud in that moment, the first thing she said when she understood that Patsy was gone, has been quoted in different forms across different accounts over 60 years, and the version she gave to People magazine years later is the one that stayed closest to what actually came out of her. When I heard that morning Patsy was gone, I said out loud, "What am I going to do?" It was like a rug had been pulled out from under me. She was my friend, my mentor, my strength. What happened next is the part that almost never gets told. A week after the funeral, Loretta Lynn went to the house Patsy had shared with Charlie Dick. What she found when she got there was Charlie on the floor of their music room, empty beer cans around him. Patsy's new album playing on the record player, on repeat, in an empty room. She didn't leave him there. She sat down on the floor beside him and stayed. "When she died, I just about gave up," Loretta wrote in Coal Miner's Daughter. "I thought this was the end for me too. And for a time, it almost was." For several years after March 5th, 1963, Loretta Lynn could not bring herself to perform any of Patsy Cline's songs. The voice was too familiar, the loss was too close. She had watched Patsy build a catalog that would outlive both of them, and standing in front of an audience and singing those songs without Patsy alive to hear it was something Loretta could not make herself do. In August 1964, 16 months after the crash, Loretta Lynn gave birth to twin daughters. She named one of them Peggy, after her sister. She named the other one Patsy. That name was not a public gesture. It was not a press release or a tribute record or a statement in a magazine. It was a private act, done inside her own family, in the way that people keep someone close when the only thing left to keep is a name. The tribute record came years later. In 1977, Loretta went back into the studio with producer Owen Bradley, who had produced Patsy's records, who had sat in those same rooms with that same voice, and recorded an album called I Remember Patsy. It was the first time she had committed to performing Patsy's songs in a formal setting since the crash. The album reached #1 on the country charts. She wrote about Patsy in her autobiography. She wrote about her again in her 2020 memoir, Me and Patsy Kicking Up Dust, My Friendship with Patsy Cline, which she published when she was 88 years old, and which she described as the book she had been carrying inside her for decades. "She came into my life and changed everything," Loretta wrote. "That's what real friendships do. We made each other better." In a 2009 interview, when a journalist asked Loretta about Patsy Cline, she paused before she answered, a pause that lasted long enough that the interviewer later wrote about it, and then she said simply, "I still miss her to this day." 46 years. She still missed her. Patsy Cline offered Loretta Lynn $70 and a seat on a plane. Loretta said no because she had a gig in Memphis. Her last words were, "I sure wish I could come with you." 5 months after Patsy died, Loretta named her daughter after her. 14 years after that, she finally went back into a studio and sang Patsy's songs out loud. And 30 years after that, she wrote a book about her, because 60 years was apparently still not enough time to feel like the story had been fully told. Loretta Lynn outlived Patsy Cline by 59 years. She died on October 4th, 2022, at the age of 90. What she said the morning Patsy died, "What am I going to do?" turned out not to be a statement of despair. It turned out to be a question she spent the rest of her life answering. Subscribe if you want more of the stories that took 60 years to come fully into the light.